relationships are so much better to continue improving than they are to just ditch. And I think a lot of times what the world tells us and what transactional mentality tells us is if it's not working, change it. And it's like, no, if it's not working, fix it. Welcome to the Maven Marketing Podcast. Today is Maven Monday. This is the place where we answer your real-life marketing questions so you can grow your business, eliminate waste in advertising, and achieve the big dream. And today is a special day, my friends. I have two of my favorite big dreamers right here in front of me in Frank and Maven World Headquarters Studios. My friends Tyler and Ashley Smith, here from the Window Source of Athens and the Window Source of Atlanta. And these have been some of my original fans, my most trusted friends as we've grown businesses together. We've traveled the world together. We've built families side by side. And we don't get the chance to be in the same room near often enough, but I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Glad to be here.
They are in town today, and they have an incredible story. And if you are in any kind of a service business, and if you are trying to grow that service business, I promise you there is gold in store for you from my friends sitting in front of me. We're going to talk all about their journey, marketing, advertising, mindset, team building, all the things they have had to do, and going from literally $0 when we started working together, figuring out how I was going to take time off my job to help you guys, and how you were going to come up with like the few $100s a month to pay me, to now they're doing multi-millions of dollars in sales. They have multiple locations and just an awesome team. And so we're going to talk about how they got there from nothing. And so if you're one of our newer entrepreneurs listening, maybe driving around in your truck right now, maybe in your office figuring out how to get clients, how to, go from being this one-on-one, one-man show to having an empire and a team. Tyler and Ashley are your people, and they're going to tell you all the secrets of how they did it.
Yep.
True?
True.
In 30 minutes, you're just going to download
I will
it all.
try my best.
It'll really be the last podcast episode you need because they're going to tell it to you all. So, so just a quick background. Tyler and I met. They're actually officially client number 3 of Frank and Maven. I had not actually even left my real job yet. When this Southern boy out of Atlanta called me and said, I hear you know a little bit about advertising and it scares the heck out of me. And, I'm about to quit my job too. And so can you help me? And I said, I think I can. I wasn't even sure, but I said, I think I can. And so we met up in New Orleans, of all places.
Yep.
And we sat over dinner and we just talked about how we were going to change the world together. And here we are 10 years later.
Here we are.
Right?
Yep.
Crazy, right?
Crazy.
So thank you guys for being here. And I've thought so much about what I want to ask you guys today, because we could make 12 episodes. We could make our own podcast about, man, the ups, the downs, the crazy, wild stuff we've learned and seen. But I think what I want our audience to learn the most from you today, something I've seen you do so well, is go from this mentality of owner-operator to owner-leader. Both of you. Leadership team. And you've done that while being parents, while being a strong couple, while doing all the crazy stuff that happens to us in our 30s, late 20s and 30s, and holy smokes, I'm gonna watch this one day and I'm gonna be so embarrassed talking about myself like I've learned something at 35 or whatever. So, but tell me, talk about some of the lessons you've learned in going from zero to multi-millions of dollars in sales.
I mean, it doesn't happen overnight, right? And I can't believe it's been 10 years since we were walking.
Like
I was pacing back and forth because our house was so small I couldn't even be in the living room. And you had to work a full day. I had to work a full day. So it was at 8 to 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
I can't believe that's been 10 years. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight, right? So it's just hammering all day as good as you can, right? And like I said earlier when we were talking, you're a salesman first in the business, right? So, I mean, when you become your salesman, then you slide into operations, then you slide into, you get a little taste for marketing, and then you have a couple kids, and you have to juggle that. I mean, like when you look at it from the outside looking in, it looks like it's overwhelming and almost impossible to achieve.
Yeah.
But, it happens in baby steps.
Did you ever know your hair was on fire that much?
Yeah. Well, no, I didn't. I mean, looking back, thinking about some of the days I had, it's just crazy how I even managed it. But
So you started in a little tiny town called Athens, which is under this huge umbrella called Atlanta.
Yep.
And you started at one location. And Tyler was a craftsman. He was a carpenter by trade.
Right.
And he came across this opportunity to start his own business.
Yep.
And you fill in any of the blank spots here, but
I mean,
you weren't scared at all.
I wasn't. Well, I had nothing to lose. And that's what I can tell any entrepreneur out there that might be listening to this is, I mean, you can always go back and get your job back. And that's kind of the way I looked at it. And that's how I told Ashley is we can always go back and get our job, or we can get a better job. What you can't get is the time back.
Wow.
That you're losing by staying where you're at, right? But yeah,
if you're so possessed to have your own business, right?
Right. If you're a little crazy,
it's a special disease. Yeah.
Definitely worth it, man. But yeah, window installer for 10 years, and then we decided to go out on our own and had no sales experience and started to learn to sell. Like I said, to learn the operations, learn the marketing, and it just, yeah.
Yeah. So Tyler, if I can tell the story,
sure.
This is a little bit what I want to talk to you guys about, because you've filled in for each other in so many ways. And so Tyler left, a job swinging a hammer, basically, right?
Yeah.
All day, every day. And he's dang good at it. And left to start this kind of no-name window operation in a town where he was born, but basically didn't have anything else going for him. And so we built everything from the website to the how are we going to get customers to call, to the business cards, the trade show booths, the all sorts of advertising we've learned from each other over the years. And meanwhile, Ashley is at home with two boys by that time, barely,
yes,
barely, like a newborn and a 5-year-old or whatever.
Right.
And so what we figured out is we're going to need a little bit more money to make this thing go. And so Tyler would go get these little odd jobs doing windows. Like, it was just we were happy to get a phone call a day, right?
Yes.
I remember.
Yes.
I remember we'd get a phone call a day, and I'd be running my job, and at the end of the night, I'd be pacing my driveway because I lived in a tiny house and couldn't talk because I had a newborn, and Tyler was doing the same, and I had the call go, but meanwhile, he was taking these old
wood sashes,
all these
out.
wood windows from these old houses. He would replace windows in, and he'd give them to Ashley, and she'd do a little artistic stuff on them and make them look rough, and she'd go sell them to flea markets.
Correct.
Yes.
Online, Etsy.
Etsy. Okay.
When Etsy first started, yeah.
Yeah. So she was selling wood frame windows before wood frame windows were cool. She started a trend, and then everybody started doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But that first year, Ashley came up with enough money to buy a little advertising, pay a little advertising guy, and get Tyler fully out of his job. I mean, that's like one of the most crazy stories I still tell to this day. Is you made something out of nothing. And I think that's something when I look at you guys, everybody else would look at, this is hard, I don't know what to do. And you say, we don't either. We don't know what to do, but we're going to make something out of nothing. You took old recycled junk. And do I remember right that you made like $30,000 on it that year?
I did.
Yeah, more than that, I think.
We
probably
was like a
profited
full-time
30.
job.
Yeah, it was like 45 grand, which is crazy. I mean, that's what I was making at the time.
Yeah, so you're in like a little 2-bedroom house in the garage, repurposing old windows, making the money to fuel the dream.
That's right.
And look at you now. But if I could take one lesson away to start, it's like your options are not sink or swim. Your options are swim in a lot of different ways. You make a lot of different movements in the water. And just when you don't make that failure an option, you guys certainly demonstrated that. You probably didn't feel like it at the time. I know you were scared as hell because I heard it in your voice and you heard it in mine. But you pushed through and you did something nobody saw coming. You found an opportunity that everybody else would have thrown in the trash. And so if you're listening, I would say, even if you're at a point where you've made it, even if you're a few years under your belt, it's like, don't stop looking for those opportunities to be scrappy. Sure. Literally scrappy. You took the scraps.
Yes.
Scrappy Smith over here.
Yeah. No doubt.
So tell me about, so that's like the first 3, 4, 5 years. It was when, dude, you had $1 million in like your first full year. I remember that being like a really big deal.
Yep.
In sales. And that was, but you were the guy, Ashley was the guy answering the phone. Ashley was answering the phone, but you were the guy running the appointments, doing the installs. I
Yep.
mean, I remember I'd come down with you, and for us to even have a meeting, I'd be in your truck, and we'd be going to some like job you were installing, right?
That's right.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know how I came up with the $600 to fly to Atlanta, but I did.
Right.
And man, we'd go to the grocery store. We couldn't afford to go out to eat, so we'd go to the grocery store and cook in your kitchen, all that stuff. But how did you go from that guy of wearing all the hats to being the guy that's now leading a sales team? And you literally had to become a leader while you were still trying to hold the ship together.
I don't know. Like I said, it takes so much time, and you tackle things as they come up. And first you got to learn to sell, and then, you start getting more leads, and you got to learn how to recruit. Just recruiting in and of itself is not easy to bring on. I mean, I remember recruiting window installers and sales guys actually driving to the dumpsters. I know they would be driving to the dumpster to dump their windows off, and I get a chance to talk to them.
So got an intuitive way to go recruit guys because you were one of the guys, right?
Yeah, trying to be creative there. But recruiting and
everybody else would run a job on Indeed. You're like, nope, I'm going to go where they're at the end of their day and they're mad and they're frustrated.
Yeah, and I still believe that source of recruiting is the best way still today.
You meet them where they're mad.
We use Indeed, I'm not going to say we don't, but that is that does work.
Think about that for a second, though. You met the people where they are. That's a marketing lesson.
Yeah.
You met we're talking about people you had to hire to install windows. And if you don't know anything about the window business, that's one of the hardest parts. Is to find craftsmen that will go do the work that you go sell because you can't do it all yourself.
Yeah.
And you found them at the dumpster where they were throwing their stuff
I will
away.
say, almost in any industry, and I'm not an expert in really anything other than carpentry and framing and windows and siding, but I would say becoming an expert in that industry first and foremost is the best thing because you carry a certain level of confidence when you're doing the hiring.
Yeah.
And then, of course, your people look up to you and you kind of lead as an example. Now, I can't say that for holding a sales meeting or, holding a staff meeting because I don't have any prior experience to that. But as far as the nuts and bolts of the business, that was easy when we had our first breakthrough from 2 to 3 million. And then you have to learn a whole new set of problems and learn how to fix things. And I didn't get there by reading books. It was just experience, just hitting things and sitting back and asking yourself, what do you do different next time to get to the 5 million when we hit that point. And now I'm having a whole new set of learning lessons, if you will, getting into the next chapter of our business.
So you just said like 4 things you just brushed over there. I'm going to lay them out. I'm going to go back to them. Hopefully I'll remember to go back to all of them. But the biggest one I heard was what got you to say 2 million is not going to get you to 3. And what got you to 3 is not going to get you to 6 and beyond, right? And so you're always, I think you've learned by fire, but now we know that. Now we're looking at the next growth of both of our companies. And we're going, okay, I know the process is learn a new skill set, then execute, and then expect to get kicked on your butt and then learn a new set of skills,
Exactly.
right?
Yep.
And so learning that process, maybe 3 or 4 times it happened to us, it felt like a lot of failure, but it's like, all I needed to do was learn a new set of skills.
Exactly.
You can't, just because you're the owner doesn't mean you're qualified to lead
That's right.
the next level of your company, right? That's
right.
That's so huge. I think that's for anybody. I think that's whether you're leading a, $5, $10, $100 million company. I think you have to understand that. One of the other things you said is that you didn't read books.
Correct. And I had time to read books. I chose not to, I mean, I read books now a little bit, and listen to podcasts and try to strengthen my knowledge around the business and trying to get that next breakthrough. Because it's not going to happen just overnight. But go ahead. You were going to say.
Well, no, I was going to ask you, like, I think you got books regurgitated maybe through some other sources.
Yes.
And I want to talk about your mentors and some people you're following now that are helping you sharpen that saw. But did you, my experience with you is I watched you, basically push. And we all have this experience of breakdown. And then you learn and you go back. So you were essentially writing a book, right?
Basically.
You could. We should talk about that.
Yeah.
I know somebody that could help you write a book. Not me. I have a great coach for that. But I think that's so interesting. I think as entrepreneurs, we always want to be looked at as the one that has the perfect thing to say, and we show up and we're polished and we're just ready to run this ship.
Yeah.
And that's just not the case.
It's
man.
not, man. Yep.
Not even for some of my best and most heroic friends.
Yep.
Sometimes you just have to be willing to show up. And while it's kind of funny to say, I didn't read any dang books, it's like, actually, you didn't have time or energy to do that. I promise, having watched it, you didn't. So I'll give you an off there. But I'm not taking anything away from books. I have some very, very, very precious knowledge I've learned from that. But the person who wants to sit and read a book is very often the person who will not get up and do the damn thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you really want something bad, like, growing a business, you're going to be so beat by the end of the day. You're just getting ready to pack it in and start over and do it all over again. But I feel like experience is really the best schooling for know-how, just hard, like just overall grit and really wanting it.
It's probably not the process either of us would use to build the next business we have.
It changed,
but
yeah.
I think without that fresh, like just raw gasoline in your soul that is just burning to go out and do something.
Yeah.
And I think very, very, very few people get anything done without having that.
Yeah.
Not to the level you've done it for sure. So you heard it here. Don't read books. Just do it.
Don't do it.
That gets to the topic of analysis paralysis. Now, Ashley was home reading the books. I know she was.
Oh, yeah.
And she was, whenever you were stuck, she's like, well, I read this thing. And you were like, oh, yeah, that's brilliant. And so she read all the books for you.
Yeah, there's something happened behind the scenes for sure.
Ashley, you're the real star of this show. How have you held this explosive force together all these years? What have you seen?
I definitely say Tyler is not a quitter. That's one thing. When things get tough,
He gets tough. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
When things are easy, we have in the past sat back and kind of just wrote it out. But when things get tough, you've really put in the work and you're not a quitter. And you've grown into a leader now, more of a leader than just a business owner.
Tell us about some of the days you came home and you were like, oh, wow. Or sorry, Tyler came home and he was like spent, burnt out. I know spouses, whether it's, wife is working super hard and husband's like, oh, wow, she's burnt out, or vice versa. Like, in this case, what did you learn from that experience? Because I think if you asked Valerie, there were times she saw a totally different person. Not that was probably bad or like maybe, off kilter or anything, but just like, oh, wow, that's a different version of you than I've seen. What can you say to somebody who's maybe married to a Tyler right now? How do you support that beast?
I'm just always there.
Yeah.
Well,
when we were building Atlanta, that was rough. The first year of running sales calls, 2 hours from the house, getting home at 9 or 10 o'clock. Mm-hmm. That was probably my worst.
Yes.
You were kind of the rock then, always.
Yeah. I just try to support you.
Yeah.
I feel like when you are stressed out or when things get rough, that actually, kind of lights a fire and you just grind it out. Like he works hard,
Yes.
Yeah. And if I didn't have that, there's no way.
If you can't tell, Ashley is one of the most calming, mature, and wise souls you'll find. And she doesn't take a whole lot of impulse, even when it's all around her, I think.
Right.
And so I know that's been a gift to you. It's been a gift to me at times, actually.
Very true.
Sometimes I'll call Ashley. Well, back in the old days, I'd be like, dude, is he all right? She'd be like, yeah, he's going to be fine. So, all right. So
we balance each other out.
We do. Or Ashley does. And I
does.
certainly have that in my marriage. So talking about mentors, I know your biggest mentor, but I'm going to let you talk about him and tell us about some of the things you learned from him.
My greatest mentor has got to be my dad. There's guys out there that I followed in the past, but I can't really call him mentor if I don't know them personally.
Right.
So nobody else had a chance to mentor me but my father, and he's extremely knowledgeable in business, and he was just very patient with me, and he has a role to play in our business, but even personal life, marriage, he's always got a life lesson. But from a business standpoint,
very wise.
We wouldn't be where we're at today without him for sure. Well, he just kind of exceeded and sped up the learning process.
Yeah.
And accepted that I don't know what I don't know, and he's only gonna break off little chunks and pieces to kind of get me where I'm at. But
so say there's another entrepreneur who doesn't have a Phil, your dad, in their life. What is one key ingredient you'd pull from your experience with him and just say, this is my gift to you. You need this.
If there's another entrepreneur?
Yeah, that was where you were maybe, 7-8 years ago. What's the one thing you learned from your dad that you would say, dude, you're going to need this?
Yeah, I would say, finance isn't everything, and I don't like, even you in the past have said, hey, forget about the numbers for a second. You got a business to run. And I get that.
Did I say that?
Surely, because you can
not.
get wrapped up around the finance, but I'd say understanding the numbers and the metrics behind growth and scalability, I think is number one. Understanding break-even points. That's a hard thing for some people to understand. Yeah, and he was really good at breaking that down for me. So I'd say if you can find somebody that can spell this out in layman terms, so you know what you need to do to feed your family and keep growing the business, I think that's number one before anything.
For me, that was Janet.
In year 1 or 2.
Exactly. Yeah. I'd say the exact same thing about Janet. She still keeps it simple for me. She's like, money in, money out, what you need to go get.
Yeah, and that formula is for 1 million or 150 million, so it's the same.
You can't buy a helicopter yet, Brandon.
Right.
You're close.
You got to know that.
Actually, you're not so close anymore.
You got to pay MX next month. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So that is so cool that gets to be your dad. And I think so many people don't get the blessing of that experience. I had that from my dad as well, in maybe different ways than you did. But
it's a huge benefit for sure.
So many ways. Actually, the quote on today's Maven Monday email was from my dad, and it just takes a little bit to be better than average. And he didn't know it, but he was teaching me the most valuable lesson in advertising and showmanship and just all the things that it takes to do our business. So, so big cheers to Phil, and I hope everybody finds a Phil if that's you're not lucky enough for that to be your dad. I can attest to that too. I learned a lot from Phil. Just analytics and the way you break down problems and that whole retail math. How many customers do I need to get? What's my average break off points? You talk about a break even point.
Yep.
Talk to me about that, because that was such a wonder of an experience working together. It's like I've seen you go from being this, $0 budget at the end of every day going, do I have enough money to run my business tomorrow?
Yeah.
And I've seen you make decisions from that to now to going to more of a mature, longer term thinking.
I wish I could expand more on like that, the revolution of how that plays out, from 1 to 10 years. But it's just amazing how you forget, I almost can't even remember.
I can remember
those things because there's no more room up here for what's going on today.
And for those listening, like what I'm talking about, I think we all get into this early on, and I've done this equation a million times. I would be lying if I said there isn't times I wake up and I go, I better do that again. It's the equation of what do I have? What can I sell? And am I going to be okay? Is this thing going to burn down?
Yeah.
And I think we all have that fear. And I think the outside world looks at us as having that fear and like, that looks damn scary. And you're like, oh, it's scary.
I'll tell you, my biggest fear is not running out of business. It's just constantly doing the same thing wrong and not understanding where you're at in the business, the opportunity that could be available to you and you don't know it, and then just constantly doing that for 20 or 30 years. Then you go to sell your business and it's not worth near as much as you thought it was. So I think that's why understanding the numbers and scaling it and being able to sell your business one day and retire or pass it off to your kids. And it's worth something. And it's not just.
Probably the fact that you were worried about that is the fact that it's already taken care of is what I've learned.
Yeah.
If you are fretting about it, you've probably already fretted enough.
Yeah, I'd say so.
And you've probably already got enough energy in the tank that you're going to steer away from those fears.
Yep.
Don't look where you don't want to go. It's kind of
correct.
Kind of what I learned.
Control what you can control.
Yeah, exactly. So that's all great stuff. Any other, we won't call them mentors, but guiding voices that you came across over the years?
There's a few. So Dave Ramsey was huge as far as understanding money and finance because me and Ashley had nothing, right? When we first started with about $5,000, which just bought the license to start the business. Then we still had to use the money from the sashes and her arts and crafts business to pay for everything else. So he was huge in helping us try to stay tight. Entrepreneurship. Yep, that was a big one.
I think Tyler and I have a weird thing in common. We both read this book at a very young age.
Yeah.
And somebody, one of my key mentors, handed it to me, and I read it, and then I became a huge Dave Ramsey fan. I think maybe that's one of the things we connected on early. And by the way, quick thing. If you want to send a question to MavenMonday at frankandmaven.com for the podcast, you'll get your question answered by me or somebody smarter than me or somebody who's capable of answering your question, whether it's for Tyler or Ashley, I know how to get a hold of them. Or maybe something you want in a future podcast. If you'll do that, I will send you a copy of Entree Leadership. You can't have this one because it's signed by the man himself. This one's my personal copy. But cool. I will get you your own copy, and it's a great book if you haven't read it. Foundational wisdom. I think it's just oozing with wisdom. It's just things a young mind or I don't care where you are in your journey. You just need to hear it. There's times I still go back and I listen to the audiobook of this, and it's like I've heard it a bunch of times, and I listen to the radio stuff. Podcast. Man. By the way, Dave Ramsey podcast, phenomenal. Many of you are coming to us, I think, from the Dave Ramsey podcast because we're advertising some of our videos on there. But anyway, hit us up, MavenMonday at frankmaven.com if you want one of those. But Dave Ramsey was key. We had the shared experience. You had the CDs. You went around in your truck. I
did. I had the 6 CD set.
This is before Audible. This is before Spotify. I did the same thing, man. I've got them. They're in a box upstairs. I've got the original CDs I listened to this stuff on.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. It's
crazy to think that in it.
For sure.
Anybody else? Sales training?
Yeah, Grant Cardone, I would have to say. He was probably the number one motivator. Now, I don't necessarily follow everything he says, but in real estate, but as far as salesmanship, how to close the deal, but still honor the customer, put their needs first. He was excellent in those regards, and I still listen to him to this day. Of course, I don't sell in the house anymore, but when I did, I would listen to that before I walked in the door.
Such a pure energy he has.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Motivator.
You could not believe a word he's saying. Excellent. You'd still walk away going, I feel better. I'm ready to do something, right?
Yeah. Jordan Belfort, and not him in particular, but I think he's cut from the same cloth. But Zig Ziglar was another one.
Oh man,
that
Zig
stood
was
out.
so
that
huge.
Was excellent. Yep. Yeah.
Secrets of the Sale was actually the first book I read on sale. I think I read it when I was 17.
Yeah, I listened to the audio books.
Yeah, such a powerful book. Hey, I'll send you Zig Ziglar's book if you.
It's a good one.
Send a question in too. You get Dave Ramsey and Zig Ziglar because that's really foundational for me. Ashley.
Yes.
Who did you read? Who did you follow while you were learning how to build this business with Tyler?
Didn't have a lot of time. I would say,
You were painting sashes. You were painting windows. Yeah.
That in the beginning, and then 3 kids. So, just running a house. Yeah. Was I still going to school at that time? I can't remember.
You were kind of, I think you were out of that. But marketing, I feel like you spent a lot of time on the marketing side. That's one thing I never really tapped into, is you kind of had that.
Yeah. Ashley does know, but she was a big part of the stories that inspired the Maven marketer. She probably does know that because she's read it, but not saying she read the book, but I'm saying that we literally learn trial and error. All the stuff that we talk about today with confidence and clarity and just complete conviction, and we're like, yeah, we've done it thousands of times now. These are some of the original people that we tested that crap on. And these are some of the original people that let us fail, to be honest with you, and let us learn the lessons, and we learn them together. We're like, what do you think we should do next? I'm like, I've got an idea. And they're like, cool. And so then the phone would ring, and then we'd be like, all right, well, that one's over. So what I would say, just looking at our friendship and our partnership over the years, is like relationships are so much better to continue improving than they are to just ditch. And I think a lot of times what the world tells us and what transactional mentality tells us is, if it's not working, change it. And it's like, no, if it's not working, fix it. In a lot of cases. And when you get to do that with people you respect, and if you trust, and if you have shared values, I do think that's a requirement. I think that business growth is inevitable, but mindset growth is inevitable. Being able to have conversations like this is inevitable. And the business outcomes that you've had, and I've seen so many others have, are just kind of inevitable, right? That's a beautiful thing. So last thing I want to ask you about. What is some advice Ashley and Tyler would give to 5 years ago, Ashley and Tyler, and then maybe before that?
Stay driven, stay motivated, treat the business like it's your baby, like that's what we've always done. You just really
we don't ever lose motivation to keep our kids alive, I guess. No, we
right.
Yeah. So it's kind of the same thing, same category, right?
Yeah. I guess when we got to a point where we had a lot of people, department heads operating, and we realized, man, this thing's creating cash cow for us, and we don't have to be there. We stepped away, bought some land, built a house, spent some more time. We just kind of put it on the back burner. And, we regret a little bit of that here and there, but, we can't change it, and we're back in it, wholeheartedly. And
so that experience, where's the balance in that? Because I don't know if it's a myth, but I think the illusion is build your own business and you live a life of freedom. And I think we all secretly know that's not actually really true, but there's times it's tempting. It's like the money's there.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to the lake or whatever, right? For extended periods of time, say 3 or 4 months. And by the way, Tyler and Ashley have one of the most beautiful homes in all of Atlanta, and anywhere around. Like it's a stellar place. We may post their Instagram pictures of the place they built if they'll let us do that. But
we would.
But all that to be said, where do you find the balance? Now you're coming back and you're going, okay, you probably didn't want to be gone, right? I think that's what we learned.
Mm-mm.
You miss being around your baby, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then, but coming back to that with maybe a little less burnout in you and kind of having gone through that full circle, how does that change your energy and your process today? Like, what are you doing today you weren't doing 5 years ago?
I mean, when you get the business to where you want it to be, before you get it there, you look at it and you think, well, I can take more time off, I can travel. But we realized we didn't get a lot of enjoyment out of that. I feel like we get more enjoyment out of hard days. Wow. Going to the gym, putting in a 90-minute workout, hitting it hard, eating right, coming home, spending time with each kid individually, and making that a habit. And that's where we found joy. And then ultimately, our marriage would get better in the process. Yeah. Because we weren't carrying all these stones on our back. When you don't do things, you just carry a level of stress, is what I figured out. So that's why I told my oldest son, is the harder your days are, assuming you're, it's not it's a good hard. Yeah. Putting in the energy.
It's for a good purpose, right?
Yeah, exactly. I feel like the easier tomorrow will be.
Meaningful work, right?
Yeah.
Right. Ashley, you were talking to me earlier about some things you learned with just communication. I was asking you, like, what would you tell a young married couple trying to build a business and driving each other crazy? Like, what would you say?
I'd say probably working together in a business, working on the same things day to day is probably not the healthiest for, especially a new married couple starting a business. But I think we work on our own things separately.
Yes, that's better.
Learn how
not really working in the business, but working on the business separately. Yeah. And then we can communicate on what's going on and things like that, but it doesn't consume our whole life,
Yeah.
And then you have to turn it off at a certain
We were talking
point.
before we started recording. I think that's been so key for Valerie and I. I think a lot of people are surprised to learn we don't talk about our company at home very often at all. Like there's a hard rule and it's just like, it's done. That's it. It's not that we don't care. It's not that we don't have times of collaboration, but way more often we're talking during business hours about the company. And then when it's home, it's home. I made this rule of leaving the laptop in the car. Like I just don't do it.
Yep.
And after 6 is her time. But you were also saying stay in your lane.
Yes.
And so you work a lot on marketing stuff. Tyler's usually the last to know about the money we've spent in marketing, which is good for all of us. But
right. Me giving advice on sales training or anything like that. Like I've learned, just stay out of my lane. Stay out of that lane. Stay in my own lane. Do my thing, and we both enjoyed that.
Such a healthy respect, and to listen to that, you're like, that could sound bad because it's like, wait, your husband and wife, you don't talk about that stuff. It's not that you can't. It's that it's just work stuff. It's like doesn't belong together until it needs to be, right? And a lot of times we learn to stay in your lane, right? Valerie and I are two opposite ends of our business. I'm at the very top end of it, doing the product and generating the relationships and all that stuff. And she's the very last end, which is, the accounting and finance stuff of that. So, and we talk weekly maybe about it. So that's a really good thing. Okay. Last thing, anything you guys have read that you feel like has made you a better couple or made you better leaders or made you more supportive of each other as entrepreneur power couple?
Love Languages book.
I mean, we have read that book and
the 5 love languages.
The 5 love languages. That was helpful.
Book.
I never thought I'd ever read that.
Everybody should read that. I don't even care if you're married.
You really should.
You really should read that.
And we pulled a lot from that. But at the same time, we've grown so much and matured over the last 2 or 3 years. You could say it's just overall maturity. And then the kids are getting older. They're more self-sufficient, so it's a little bit less stress for us. But the love languages was phenomenal. And then open communication. I think that's a good rule of thumb for communication.
Living a healthier life.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
taking care of yourself, taking care of your kids.
I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are young and old, by the way. I actually see a lot of guys in their 60s struggle with this big time. And they think, well, I'll go out and get the money and you stay at home and do the home things. And it's like, obviously that has cultural problems for today's definition of gender roles and all that. I'm not talking about that. That is something you could deal with. But just in general, like it's such a big opportunity for guys. I'm going to speak to guys because I can relate to this. It's like, don't feel like that by bringing that, what we think is a burden home, that you're actually hurting her. Yeah. It's actually usually helping. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that.
Yeah. And it's not that you bring it out in the right time and with the right respect, but talking about those love languages, sometimes it's just quality time and her knowing what's in your mind because she sees competition with what you're at work. Like,
yeah.
You can't ever be in a position where your work is a competition with anybody, any good relationship you want to have. And so that communication is not, I would encourage anybody listening, like communication is not, I'm bringing her this plate of worries, because I think most people like Ashley are wise enough to trust and understand, or else they would be way more freaked out than they are, right?
Right.
Just a matter of sharing that experience.
Mm-hmm.
Last thing I'll add is you said something earlier that I wrote down, and that's that the greatest anxiety does not come from the things you do; it's from the things you don't do.
Oh man, yeah, that's something I live by. I heard that, I don't know, maybe 3 months ago, and I've always known that to be true. And now I kind of live by it. So every time something happens, like I've got a big quote for a guy. I promise I'd get to him by I think tomorrow. So I'm going to work on that a little bit tomorrow, and get that to him, and that'll be just less stress. And so, majority of my anxiety that I've carried over the last 4 or 5 years hasn't come from these new learning curves. I mean, that a little bit too, but it's just not doing the things that I ought to be doing, and putting things done before you say you're going to do them. And if that goes with anything in life, putting things off, procrastinating never helps. But I feel like that's
physical.
Health.
We talked
fitness.
a whole lot about how the gym makes us such better leaders.
Yeah.
And nutrition and better health habits, right?
Yep. It absolutely does.
So when we're not doing those things, that's where the anxiety comes from, right?
Yeah.
Anything you guys would add or tell our audience? You don't have to say anything else. You've done so much already. It's gold.
I don't think so. I mean, if you're a young entrepreneur watching this, I would say get started first and foremost. When you think you might be risking something, you're probably not. Your boss will take you back regardless of what he says, and just go for it. And just live like you're broke till you make it.
Dave Ramsey would say, "Still live like you're broke."
Still live like you're broke. I know. Me and Dave don't see eye and eye always.
No, maybe he would. No, he would just say, "Spend less than you make and do it for a long time."
That's right.
We'll land there. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thanks for having
traveling
us.
all the way from the great state of Georgia.
Yep.
To Frank and Maven World Headquarters. We'll be back here every Monday answering your real life marketing questions, because marketers who can't teach you why
are just a fancy lie.
Have a great week.